Lakshmi, now we can start, I think.
Okay, sure. Um, all right. Thanks everyone for joining me again. I hope all of you had a good lunch and were also able to stretch yourselves a little bit. So the hands-on session, like I mentioned, I have pre-recorded most of the videos so it doesn't get stuck or there aren't any issues. But there are some prerequisites that I hope all of you have installed. One of them, as I had mentioned earlier, is creating an account on Figment Data Hub. So that is a must. We'll be doing the hands-on session in 3 parts. It's going to be a bit of a stretch. So I hope maybe the last one, if we don't have enough time, we'll cut down some part of the video. Not an issue. So the first thing we'll be doing is working on the basics, right? How to write scripts to interact with the node, how to create an account, in this case a testnet account, how to query the blockchain, and how to create a simple transaction. So I'll play this one in just a bit. um, how do I go to the next slide? Okay. The next one that we are going to be doing is a smart contract walkthrough, where I'll just be walking you through a simple smart contract. What is a smart contract? What are its different elements, etc. Then the last will be building with Near. That is, we'll be writing our own smart contracts and test cases and deploying them on the testnet. Now, this part is what is a slightly longer one. So we'll figure out based on the amount of time we have, how much we can stretch. So I'm going to just close everything else so I have the bandwidth to do this. So I have kept my volume at the maximum. If there are any issues where you're not able to hear me, just let me know. I'll be logging in through another screen as well, just to answer any of your questions. So if you have a Figment Data Hub account, you will be able to breeze through this entire tutorial and you have Node.js installed. If not, I would request you to install Node.js and then follow along this tutorial step by step. So here we go.
All right. So the first thing that we are going to be doing is we are going to be walking through how to connect with Near, how to create accounts on Near, what are accounts on Near, and understanding those things. So this is going to be very basic hands-on. I'm going to be searching for something called Figment Learn. You can also search for this on Google. And once you search for this, you will get a URL called https://learn.figment.io. Once you open this URL, it would show you what are the different things that you can do at Figment. You can click on pathways and see that there are different pathways for different protocols. So as we are focused today on the Near protocol, we'll be going through the Near pathway. So you can see that there are different pathways. There is a Near pathway. Once you click on the Near pathway, you'll reach here and you need to set up an account on Data Hub. So if you have set up this account, you can already jump straight into working with the pathway. But if not, it's just hardly a couple of minutes of work. You need an email ID to sign up and set up your own account. So once you have your own account set up, which is the case with me, I already have my own account set up, I can use the protocol that I want to work with. So Figment Learn is actually a project which has been given a grant by the Near protocol to build tutorials. As you can see, Figment Learn has various Web3 pathways that you, if you're also interested eventually to explore, you can. And it tells you about the entire protocol in a very simple manner. Like you can see, there's like a 101, the RPC and the REST API, So basically, Figment runs their own node and exposes an API for us, which we can use to connect to the node and explore the blockchain, which is what we would be doing. So once you are able to come to this page, datahub.figment.io, you would need to click on near, which is what I'm doing now. And once you do click on near, you will see that you have been given an API key. This is the API key that you will be using to help connect to the running blockchain node. What we are going to be using is the near testnet RPC service. That is, we only want to connect to the testnet and see what is happening. As you can see, that there are other services provided by Figment as well. There is a mainnet RPC, there is an indexer as well. Indexer API endpoints are generally used to search for something, right? You want to index something, you're looking for something. That is also provided. So the API key has some amount of rate limitation. That is, you can only call X number of, you can see there is like a daily usage, our quota is like 100K. So this is enough for us to learn, right? And if you want to use this professionally, eventually going forward to build that apps as well, you can upgrade the plan and use this, or you can, directly use the near mainnet URL to deploy your smart contracts if that's the case. So I have completed most of these pathways myself earlier, but today I'm going to be doing this along with you. So we are, we can explore together. And of course, if there are any questions, I can take them as they go. Or once we complete the pathway, I'll go back to the chat and look at the questions. So the first thing that is required is to connect to a near node, right? So Data Hub is where we get the APIs. As we saw, we have an API key using which we can connect to the node. So the first thing we'll be doing is connecting to a near node, right? And the whole thing is written in Node.js. It is like building a simple Node.js application. Which we will be building further. Later, if you want, you can watch this video. Basically, I'm giving you the gist of this video. So as per the requirement sheet, you would need to have Node.js installed on your machine. You would need to see if you have the right version installed. If you are using something recent like 15.x, then you would need to make the necessary changes. So I have, let's see, I've opened my terminal here. I'm going to reduce this and keep my terminal as well. Use this a bit. Okay, let's see. I may have some recent version. Okay, I have a 12.x version, which is fine. What I would need to do as the next step, let's just follow the steps here, right? And then I will explain to you what's happening. So and then once we have checked what version of node we have, we can create a directory for a node directory or an NPM project, which will initialize a new Node.js project for us. We can use the npm init -y for it. So you can do this inside a parent directory that you have created, or this would also create a project directory for you. It's up to you. Since I will be using this for the entire demo, I have created already a directory called NIT near demo. So so once we have created our directory, I'm just going to create an Node.js project. You can see that a package.json is available now. So in the new package.json, we are just it says that we leave the file as it is. So let's leave that. Now, now that we have our Node.js application set up, we can install the required packages. So some of these packages I had already given as prerequisites. So I'm hoping you would have installed that, but if not, you can just copy this command and install it. The Near API JS would be used to interact with the Near smart contracts, or basically it is a JS wrapper to interact with the Near. And .env is nothing but your environment file that is for working with environment variables. And there is another JS library for called JS SHA-256 for hashing implementation. So I have installed all of the dependencies now, and you should be able to see all the dependencies in package.json. So let's quickly view that. Okay, you can see the near API, the SHA-256, the .env, so all the dependencies are there. So we are good to go. Now the next thing we are going to do is we are going to create a .env file which will hold all the sensitive data. So if you're wondering what the sensitive data is, let's see. So I've created a .env file. And now we would be adding a few environment variables that we are going to use in all the tutorials moving forward. So the first is going to be the near node URL. That is, which node of near would we be accessing? So near data hub, that is, this data hub has already set us up with a node. So that is the testnet RPC that I had mentioned. So we will be using that. The near network again is going to be the testnet. And then it would ask us to create a unique account. So this is going to be our testnet account. So I will be creating this. And in the node URL, you need to give your API key. That's when this will work. So I'm just going to copy this. So what you would need to do is you would need to go to your data hub main page, copy your API key and paste it here. Here I'm going to, so this account name, whatever we give, right, it will create a testnet account for us. So I'm going to give something like Kyan me 2. I'm going to save this file. Once this is done, what we can do, so as you can see, it talks about what is the node URL, that is the testnet RPC that is exposed by the data hub, and keep your .env file safe as it has your API access key. Now, then obviously now that we are set up, the next step is to connect with the node, near node itself. So I'm doing everything in the terminal here. If you feel more comfortable, you can also do it on an editor just to see the code better. So I'll just quickly walk through what is happening here. We are loading the environment variable, that is, which will get the environment variables from the .env file for us. So we are loading the library. And then we are loading the API, the JS library as well, which will give us access to the APIs. And then we are getting the different variables from the environment variable. So you can see that we are getting the network ID, the node URL, the wallet URL. So the wallet is nothing but the near testnet wallet that, so the account is nothing but our wallet ID, right? So first we get the wallet URL, then we get a helper URL for this, and then there is an explorer. So what is an explorer? An explorer is where you can go see your different transaction details, what happened to your transaction, the nitty-gritty details of your transaction, how much value was transferred, etc. Right? And for the key store, so a key store is nothing but, as the name suggests, it contains your public-private key pair, right? So every account that is created on a blockchain would have a public-private key pair. A public key is the one that is that symbolizes your account on many chains like Ethereum. An account address, that is your public key. It's your public address. Anybody and everybody can see that, send some tokens to that, receive something to that. You can see that in all the transactions that are happening, you will be able to see the public ID. Whereas the private key is used to sign the transactions. Like the concept of digital signature in blockchain for transactions that require certain sensitive actions like transferring value, transferring tokens from one to another, from one account to another, or a function that you have written in a smart contract which requires a certain which has certain conditions, right? They are generally called as modifiers, which has certain modifiers, which has certain conditions to that function. In that case, it requires the owner to prove their authenticity by signing. And for signing, we use the private key. So you should never reveal your private key ever for any chain, any protocol that you use. We will configure the key store later. We have a main function, so this is simple JavaScript. We are just calling the connect function from the near library. So you can see that this is the library that we have imported. We are using that to connect with the given options, that is all the client options. We are getting the provider, and then we are doing console log of what is the client config. Apart from this, we are getting the status of the current node, and we are also doing a console log for this. And finally, we are, of course, calling this function. It's an async function. Now, so there is a copy button as well. Yeah. You can just copy the entire code and paste it here. I'm just ensuring everything is in place. And then all you need to do is just run node connect.js. So here they would have just explained the entire code, which I have already explained to you. Now, what is important here is to take a look at the output. I know there are a bunch of things that are being outputted here, but not all of it is important for us to look at. So let us look at things that matter, right? So the network ID is testnet. This is the node URL which we had configured in the environment variable. The other things, the wallet, explorer, etc. What is the version? What is the build? These are configuration related details. The protocol version, which is the latest one that it has picked. The RPC address. Who are the different validators who are currently associated with the testnet? Their account IDs. The latest block hash, the latest block height, the latest state root, the block time, this syncing is false, and there is no validator account ID associated with this particular account. So here are a couple of basic details that we have got. Now we are connected to the chain, right? So first step is done and we are set for this. Now that we are connected, we will be creating our first near account on the near testnet and fund it with some test tokens. So let's see how to do that. So we have done the first thing, that is we are connected to a near node with a data hub. So now the next thing is we will be creating our first near account. So accounts are your, the way you talk to the chain, right? Your identity on the chain. What is your identity on the chain? That's your account, right? So there are, of course, couple of ways to create accounts on the near testnet. One is using the browser, another is using near CLI, which is one of the other dependencies that is there for you to install. And the third one is using the JavaScript API. So this is what we'll be doing in this particular tutorial. In this, you would require to create a file called create account.js. Now, let me quickly explain. Of course, the first part is all loading the environment variables, getting the libraries. Now, with the account that we will be creating, there will be credentials for the account. Like I told, with every account, there is a public private key pair that is generated. So you can see that we are creating a credentials path within our folder where we'll be storing the credentials. Why do we need to store the credentials? Because we'll be using this for some other calls that we'll be making later. Now, here is the key store, right? So we are going to be creating one type of key store called unencrypted file system key store. So that is this is a key store which will be stored on the file system. And why is it unencrypted? Because we are going to be using it, we are going to be accessing it, and this is just on the testnet. But you should not use this type of key store on the mainnet, right? And we are using that. We are creating, we are going to be configuring that in this credentials path, there'll be a key store that will be present. That is, it will have some keys. So this is what is being configured here in line 11 to 13. Then, of course, the rest of it are the client options. As we know, the first is the connect. After connecting, what we are going to do is we are going to get the key root path. That is, we are configuring the key pair file location. So the key store we have already configured here, what is going to be the path, and that is going to be the directory. And then there is going to be the options.accountid.json. That is, on the name of our account ID, there'll be a JSON that will be created. So this account ID, we have already, remember we have added a name for our account using which we would like to create a new testnet account. That's what we are using here now. And this is, that name is what we will reflect our account ID. As I had mentioned much earlier, in Near, you don't have to remember longer hexadecimal addresses as account IDs. You can just remember like gyan.near or gyanlakshmi.near, just simple names, right? So that's what they are doing here to kind of get the key file path. So if the key pair already exists, it will not do, it will take the data from there and it will create a new one if it does not exist. So currently, as we are creating a new account, for us, it should go inside the condition and say that it is generating a new key pair. So it uses this ED25519 to generate the new key pair. So after that, you're just, this else part is basically you're parsing the existing file and getting the key pair from there, right? Now, once this is done, it will create a key pair in the credentials directory by using the keystore.setKey. You provide the network ID, the account ID, and the key pair that you have either generated or retrieved. And here is where you are determining if the account already exists. If not, you are going to be creating the account here. So you can see that. So basically, this is the main command, right? Create account. So you have the client and then .create account. You have the account ID and the public key. And then we are going to be console logging a bunch of things. That is the account ID, then the network ID, the Explorer URL, etc. Right? So let us copy this entire piece of code, paste it here, save this, right? So now all we need to do is run this file. So as you can see, this is, I had given a new name. I have a couple of other testnet accounts actually, but thankfully I've given a new name now. So it has created for me an account of which I had given the name gyanlakshmi42.testnet. Now I can see this account on the Explorer. This is what the Explorer is for. So you can see on the browser, I'm opening the Explorer. Yeah, you can see that this has created a testnet account for me, which is currently using 182 bytes minimal storage, some default storage, and it has given me 200 Near as the native balance. So testnet has automatically funded me some minimal Near balance, right? All right, so so you can see here that we can also use the generated key files with the Near CLI tool for any other operations in the future. So we can use Near CLI to deploy our contracts, to interact with the contracts, or to interact with the node, etc. And by default, Near CLI expects all credentials to live in near credentials directory. So we can copy the keys by running the following commands as well, if we want to do this, right? So let us actually see. So you can see so many things. Of course, the node modules, etc., are the dependencies. But you can see that there is a credentials folder that has been created. So if I go inside this credentials folder, so you can see this JSON. This JSON should ideally have the details about the keys that are associated with this particular account, So you can see that we should keep a unique near account name in the .env file. Sometimes if I already have an account and I don't have the credentials on this system, right? So it will say that you already have an account, but where are your credentials? I'm not able to find. So this might fail. That's why there are a couple of you can just take a look at some notes. But of course, since you're doing it for the first time, you don't have to worry about it. All of the things will be created for you. So yeah, we are here. All right. So as the next steps, we will be querying the blockchain. Right now, we know that there is a running node. We have interacted with the node. We have created an account on the node. Now let us query the node to get some information from the node, right? From the blockchain. So I'm going to go to the query the blockchain. All right. So why do we need to query the blockchain? Because we need some information from the chain. For example, what is the node? What is the current running node that I am associated with? What is the most recent sync blocked? What is the validator set status? What are the different account balances? So if you are generally dealing with smart contracts or even in value transfers, you would want to know a lot about the account balances, the transaction details, etc. Right? So, so these are the two things that you need to primarily focus about as a developer or even as somebody who's analyzing data. Of course, these other things would be important as well when it comes to your decentralized application and what context you are creating. But these two are the primary information that I would be looking for in a blockchain. So we'll be looking at the blockchain details, the account details, the gas prices as well, and the validator set. So gas prices are, of course, becoming very, very important as Ethereum gas prices becoming more and more expensive. Solutions like Near are coming in, stepping in with their technology where they're also facilitating lesser gas prices, right? So we have completed these two tutorials. We will move to the next one, that is querying a blockchain. Let's go ahead, getting out of the credentials and creating query.js. Okay. So let us quickly see what we are doing here as we are querying. I'm just going to, generally skip the top part. I don't think it is that important for us. So this is just the skeleton that has come to us. Now we will be filling up the queries one by one. That is, get the status of the blockchain, get the latest block, get the block by number, get the current validators, get the account details, and get the gas price. So let's start with one by one. First is fetching the node status. So what do we do over here? We just have the provider and we are just going to do provider.status. This is something we did even in the first tutorial. So let us insert here. Okay, so this is straightforward. We just do a console log of the network status. Now let's go to the next. So here they're running the code after every addition, but I'm just going to run it towards the end. So we have all the data together. All right, so the next is fetching the blocks. So what we are going to do, again, this is simple. We have the provider and we use the .block function. Here we have given the finality as final. That means we'll only get the blocks that have been finalized, right? And then we console log the current block. Now that we can also get the block by the number. So what we are doing here in this is we can provide our own block ID, or here what we are doing is we are taking the info of the latest block, that is latest block height would give us what is the latest block that is present here. And we can even console log, or we can even get the data of that particular block. So I'm going to copy this, paste it here. Apologies for this very bad syntax because I'm not using VS Code or any sort of Prettyfy editor. This is looking a little bit haywire, but I'm sure you get the. If you are using an editor, I would highly recommend that. So let us save this and maybe run this, right? So we at least get this much output and then take a look. Oh, this is already good amount of output. All right. So the first thing that we queried was the status of the chain. This we already saw. Remember the version, chain ID, protocol, all of these things, right? Till here, sync info. Now the next part is the block, right? So we are getting the info of the current block. So the author is node 2. We can get a lot of information like what is the hash, what is the previous hash. So as you have seen in a blockchain, every block has its own hash, then it is connected to the previous block using the hash of the previous block. That's how the chain is created, right? So you can see the previous hash. You can see things like I don't really understand what the challenges root is, to be honest. The timestamp, nanoseconds, random value that is used used in the validation process, right? The gas price, the total supply, last final block. So all of these different types of information and whatnot, right? You can see the signature and the chunks, right? You can see the chunk hash, etc. Now, the second one that we gave a block ID, remember, as a parameter. So this is the output for that, where we have the node 0 as the author, the latest height, and then the random value, the timestamp, etc. So all of the same related data, just that the block ID were different, right? In this one, we gave some block ID by ourselves. So these are the block related information that we can get. Now the next one is going to be fetching the validators. So let's copy this. So this is again simple. You use the provider and get the validators. So we can provide the block header epoch ID. Query.jl. I am going to go here and number 3. Oh, I think I already did the number 3. Sorry, I did number 3, number 2, no problem. Here are the current validators. Let me just, right? Okay, shall we do the others as well? Let me comment out the console.log for the previous ones. Otherwise, we'll just get like too much data. Okay, so let's run this. So we should be getting the validator related data. So you can see what are the different validator sets for the network. So you can see who and all are the validators. You can see there is an account ID, their public key, then their stake. How much is their stake, right? So let us go on top. Yeah, so you can see the current validators, the total network validators, and who and all are the current validators. So if you want to stake your near on the blockchain, you can stake it with one of these validators as well. So you can see that there is an account ID, their public key, their stake, then the number of produced blocks. So how many blocks has this validator produced? So if you want to choose a validator, right, who should I stake my tokens with? You can see this data and you can choose somebody who has produced a lot of blocks. So, they are getting more options or opportunities to produce blocks. So you can stake with them, or you can stake with somebody who's produced less blocks. If you feel like this person may get more opportunity to produce blocks, etc. So you can see what nodes, what is their account ID, etc. Right? So all the details. You can also see those who are next validators, like you can see that data as well, current validators and next validators. Then current proposals, you can see that as well. The epoch start height. Okay, so you can see all of the validators who are currently in the ecosystem, right? All right. So the next thing is going to be, let's get the status of our own account. So far we were using the provider because this was all data related to the network, related to the chain. Now we are going to be using the client, which has our specific API key, right? So we are going to be using the client and we are going to be getting data about the account, our account that we created. So let us copy this. Get account details, right? Let's also get the gas price. So I'm going to comment out the previous console. All right. So for the gas price, again, because it is a feature of the network, we are going to be using the provider and we are going to be sending a JSON RPC call, right? Asking for the gas price. So let us copy this. Okay. And commented out. Okay, so now we'll be getting the details of our account as well as what is the gas price. So you can see that this is our account. You saw that initially we have got 200 near. So this is obviously the amount of decimals that is there. And then code hash, this is all ones. If any smart contract is deployed on our account, this code hash would represent the smart contract address, right? Storage usage, how much have we used? Some default storage, 182 bytes as we saw on the Explorer, the block height at which our account was generated, and the block hash, right? So these are some of the details about the account. And this is the state of our account. So if we can also use the near CLI to get the state of a particular account, which will give us all these details like what is the amount in our account, what is the code hash, what is the storage usage, etc. So storage is different from the state of the account. The state of the account tells us everything about the account, whereas storage is particular to what is it that we are storing on that particular account. So it would be storage that is storing the value, as well as could be storage related to the smart contract as well. The gas price, of course, we have also queried what is the gas price. We can see that the value of the gas price is returned to us from the network call. So in this particular call, we have directly used the send JSON RPC function, which is similar to making an RPC call. I mean, which is actually making the RPC call. So yeah, so we have now queried the blockchain, right? So the next thing, and a very interesting thing we are going to be doing is we are going to be submitting our first ever transaction, right? So now we have interacted with the network. We have created an account for ourselves. We have queried the different information that is available. And now we'll be submitting our first ever transaction. So let's see how that is being done. So first, there is a simple transfer.js file. I mean, we are going to be doing a simple transfer. So we create a transfer.js file. Let us copy the code. Okay. All right. Now let's see what is happening here. So here, and this is something that I will show a little bit later as well. This is something you might have encountered in other languages like Solidity as well. You can see that for near amounts, you can see there is a huge decimal. So every token will have a certain set of decimals, right, to represent that token. Now, in order to deal with that, we have something called and the number of decimals is most likely to be 18. It could be 10 to 18 in most cases. Sometimes it could be 8 as well, depending on the type of token. But because there are so many trailing zeros with that particular token's value, we have to use these other functionality like BigInt big num. Some of these you can find on Solidity as well, which is used to format the amount in such a way that we can understand what is happening, right? In fact, this is used to take the input, because this may not fit into the uint, right? The 18 decimals, and then 18 decimals just the decimal, but you might be transferring 2,000 here, 5,000 here, 50,000 years, and then you have 5 more decimals associated to it, and this may not fall into the number limit, so like a uint limit, right? So that's why we have things like big int or big num in comparison to Solidity to format the amount. So that is the first thing that is happening here. Amount is converted to string, it is parsed, and then there is a near utils that is formatting it into a big int. The credentials path. So why do we need these credentials? Because we are going to be creating transactions, right? So we would need to have the public and the private key with us. So we need the key store. So we are going to be getting the key store from here, the options, the setup, all of this we know. Now the transaction sender is going to be options.account ID, that is us, the account ID that we have created. The receiver is going to be pizza.testnet, another account, right? And the transaction amount is going to be 1. So we're going to be formatting it to make it near compatible, right? So what are we doing here? We are first connecting, we are getting the account, and we are getting the provider. Now, once we do that, all we need to do is we need to use the account and the function called send money. So using the send money function, it takes 2 parameters, the transaction receiver, that is going to be pizza.testnet in our case, and the transaction amount, which is formatted to reflect 1 near. So 1, you can think of it as just being, certain decimals are being added to it, so that the system understands that this is near token that is being transacted on the blockchain. So, and then once we get the result, we await for it, we get the result, we can see the transaction, right? And there is a URL that we can see as well. Post this, there is a RPC call that is happening, which is getting the transaction, right? It gives us the transaction hash as well as the account ID. This is our account name. So before that, we are checking the transaction status, result.transaction.hash. So every transaction has a unique transaction hash, transaction ID, as we call it. And that is what we'll be doing a console. So we have already copied this. Yeah. Okay. So now we are actually sending 1 near to Pizza Testnet from our account, right? All right, so the signer ID is my account. The public key of my account is this. The nonce, the receiver ID, the action is transfer, we are transferring. There is a signature, then there is a hash. Now we can see this transaction on the Explorer. Yeah, so signed by receiver is this. Transferred 1 near to pizza.testnet. You can see what was the gas here. Don't worry about that. Here we spent 223 gas to send this. Executed in which block? In which block is this transaction present? Tokens burned. So this is nothing but your gas fees. So if I now refresh this account, I should have lost 1 near. Yeah, plus some gas fee. Right? Transaction status, return success. Of course, we saw that already. The signer ID, the receiver, the block hash, the proof. So all of the associated details with the transaction are present here. So we did this successfully. Now, one of the exercises that you could do is change the receiver to perhaps you can create another testnet ID to your that testnet ID, and then change the amount. So play around with the receiver and the amount, maybe even the sender. If you have created another testnet ID on this system and you have the credentials, you can even play around with the sender. and try this out. All right. Awesome. So this is just explaining everything. Now there is another thing called advanced transfers, which is a little more deeper. You can check this out for yourself. So this is just like little more adding some more parameters. So you can see that it is playing around a little bit more with the keys. And then we fetch the access key for the account. We sign the transfer. Each transaction is having, they are creating their own nonce. Here, whereas there is a nonce, but it is created by itself, right? So sometimes what happens is some transactions, they are just, still processing, and that time the nonce number is not coming across correctly. So here they are creating their own nonce, and you can see that the whole transaction along with the parameters is being created in the advanced transaction. That is the sender account, their public key, the receiver, the nonce, all of these things are being sent. So these type of transactions, so the one that we did was just a value transfer. These type of transactions could be transactions where you would need to provide additional data. You might be interacting with a particular function in the smart contract. That's a type of transaction, right? So here you might need to provide some additional data to that particular smart contract function. That is why this advanced transaction is there. We don't have to look into it right now because we are just going to, conclude here. The writing and deployment of our smart contract we'll be doing soon. Using the near CLI and other things. So if you are interested, you can of course go to this as well, check it out, what is happening, and then take a look at how the smart contract is written and try this out at your own leisure time.
All right. So this was our first simple, very simple, straightforward hands-on, where we are performing some operations directly by making some connecting to the libraries, connecting to the node using the API JS library and using certain functionalities from there. The next hands-on that I have is around smart contract walkthrough with Near. So I'll be walking through an entire smart contract and showing you what are the different components of the smart contract, how is a particular smart contract written, and how is it being deployed, how is it being executed, etc. This smart contract is completely written in assembly script. Do not worry if you are not aware of assembly script, that is completely okay. If you are familiar with JavaScript, you will be able to catch up pretty soon. So that is the next session. But my question is, I know that there is a break sometime in the session. Do you want to take a break now or maybe after the smart contract walkthrough?
Now we can take.
Now, okay. So if you want to take a break of like 10 minutes.
Yes. 10-15 minutes. So
Okay.
now 3:45. So 4 o'clock we'll meet.
Yeah. So